So here we go again.
Can I just ask something? Because I got thrown out and then I've been trying to get in for 5 minutes. Was that just me or that happened to everybody or something?
I think that was just you. It was personally a special teaching for you.
I'm just asking because I couldn't get back in. I've had to phone Adistana to ask them to come over to let me back in. But anyway, there we are.
I was thrown out too.
I think something happened.
And me.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
I
me.
was thrown out too.
Okay, many
And
people
me.
were thrown out. Yeah.
Well, apologies on behalf of my splendid tech team to anyone who was thrown out, and we'll work on it. But it's good to know, so we can try and see what happened. And yeah.
Not moaning and complaining. It's more like just trying to understand whether it was my internet or what. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's good that we know what's going on. We don't want to lose anybody overboard if we can avoid it. Yeah. Okay. So let's carry on. So before the break, I was talking about being here with in this sitting room of Bante's as it used to be, and yeah, I was feeling very moved by that. And we went on and ended with that little meditation, which was partly about grounding ourselves. And then we went into that breathing where you breathe in, really letting life in. Often we kind of create a bubble for ourselves because we don't want to be disturbed. We try to kind of create a sort of comfort zone here, which in a way is very understandable and can be very nice, but it means we're holding most of life at bay. And actually it's not very satisfactory. We don't want to create barriers between ourselves and life. So we were breathing in like that, and with the out breath, we were letting go into life, just, if you like, surrendering to life even. Yeah, letting life be king, as Bhante puts it. So in the course of these 6 days, we're going to work our way through the Bodhicitta practice, and we'll look at different aspects of it and explore the principles behind it. I think Parami tells this story about talking to Bhante about the practice, and her saying, well, Bhante, actually these days, order members do it in different ways, and sometimes quite different ways. And Bhante saying, what's important is the principles behind the practice. If they're in touch with those, then yes, we all have our own slightly different version of the Bodhicitta practice because we're all individual. But as long as that's all based on the principles, then that's fine. That'll be okay. It's been very nice hearing different people lead. Each person has their own individual kind of flavor and different nuances. But you can see how they're all based on the same underlying principles. So we're going to look at those, and then we'll also along the way hopefully clarify some maybe difficulties and issues. And if you have questions, I mentioned you're very welcome to. There'll be some opportunities, I don't fill up all the space with talking, where you can ask questions sort of spontaneously. But it's also great if you want to send me questions that you've thought about a little bit, then I will have a chance to think about them. You'll get a better answer out of me than if you just put me on the spot right now, probably. So you can send them to me at vessantara@hotmail.co.uk, and that address will be in the chat, and it was in the email that you got sent out before the retreat. Okay. And yes, I was talking about Bhante and Bodhicitta, and Bhante always, he used to talk about how bodhicitta was most likely to arise amongst a group of people who were working together intensively. And he tended to have in mind people sort of living together, working together. So the very strong meeting of people behind a kind of collective vision and a project. And there aren't so many opportunities for that these days in Sharatna. But still, I feel like 130 of us coming together for 6 days. Yeah, if we can put ourselves into the retreat, if we can open our hearts to one another, if we can really explore the practice, if we can treat our time when we're not in the sessions as an opportunity to practice, being as open-hearted as we can be, yeah, I still think that something quite special can come out of that. We can create something special together. So before we get into the practice itself, yeah, I just want to keep on sort of setting up the conditions. I was talking about, you know, starting basic and working from there. So to set up the conditions, we need to be going for refuge. Yeah, this practice is based on having done some going for refuge, whether we've done 100,000 prostrations or not. It's still based completely on our going for refuge to the 3 jewels. And then we also need to gather resources that enable us to do the practice. So I said, if we're turning towards the suffering of the world, then we need a lot of resources in order to do that. Yeah, we need to make sure that whether we're actually in a situation or whether we're just contemplating some suffering in our meditation, that we do that with the resources so that we have an impact on the suffering rather than the suffering just having an impact on us. Yeah. We have to kind of gather together resources. Yeah, I mean, samsara is vast and powerful. And I sometimes do think of this image of sort of guerrilla fighters. It's not a very Buddhist image, but you know, you have, you know, perhaps some power that the guerrillas are trying to defeat. And if you just went into a straight sort of battle, you would lose completely. But you can gather enough people in one area that you can have greater strength than the opposition. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to gather the resources so that when we come into a situation of suffering, or when we contemplate a situation of suffering in meditation, we have the resources that suffering can be affected, rather than us being overwhelmed, brought down, you know, having our energy drained away. Yeah? We want to concentrate our forces in that way. So one of the ways in which we could do that is by considering a couple of basic questions. And one of those is, who are we practicing with? So we tend to, we can easily feel, you know, here am I sitting in my room in Brighton or Auckland or wherever it is, and it's just me. But on the mental level, we are in touch with all kinds of practitioners. So like on this retreat, we can have a sense that we're all practicing together and we can draw on the strength of one another. And I found it, I've done very little Zoom leading, but I did one retreat for the Nordic Order region a couple of months ago. And I was amazed how leading a meditation about 5 minutes in, it suddenly felt like they weren't in 6 different countries. They weren't in Estonia and Finland and Norway and so on. They were here. You with my eyes closed, I couldn't have told that we weren't all sitting in a shrine room together. It felt like that. And that's all about how we use our minds and that mental connectedness that we have. And sitting with this armchair of Bante's here, I'm remembering a talk that he gave years ago about mental fidelity and how important that was, and how when we really bring people to mind, we are in contact with them on that mental level. We tend to discount it because our whole society is so physically based. We tend to feel, it's kind of a bit out of sight, out of mind. Someone who isn't physically present isn't really here. But for a Dharma practitioner, for a spiritual practitioner, the more we go on, the more we hold people in mind, the more we hold them in mind with metta, the stronger the links that we actually have. And we can feel that as an order around the world at times. I've noticed it most strongly on solitary retreats. So often on solitary retreats, somebody comes to mind for no reason at all. And then I discover they were thinking of me, or they're ill, or they've died. And I think, oh, of course, that's what that was about. And at the time, I don't know, but it becomes clear. So we're all linked on that mental level. It's all about the nature of mind, which we will probably touch on a bit later in the retreat. So it's worth asking ourselves at the beginning of the retreat, who am I practicing with? And yes, you can say, well, I'm practicing with the order members on this retreat. But if we're on that nature of mind level, we're not limited by time and space, actually. We can be practicing with Bante, we can be practicing with Dado Rinpoche, we can be practicing with a teacher, we can be practicing with Shantideva, we can be practicing with those first 60 arahants, we can be practicing with the Buddha. Just like Pingya, he's too old, he can't get his body, to where the Buddha is, and he wouldn't make it on the road. But he holds the Buddha in his heart. And in doing that, you can either say, well, his sort of inner Buddha comes to life, or you can say there's actual mental contact. The way the Pali Canon talks about it, you think, well, actually they are in contact. So we can draw on all the resources of all those people who have practiced bodhicitta, who have practiced the bodhisattva path. You can imagine, from the Buddha onwards to Shantideva, Atisha, all those great teachers down through the centuries, they were practicing for those around them, but they weren't limited by that. They were practicing thinking of future generations. They were making great wishes that the bodhicitta would continue to unfold in the world, that the teaching would be available in the world. And who was that for? Well, that's for people like us. So we can have a sense of drawing on that strength. We can draw on that great flow of awareness and heart energy that has flowed down 2,500 years to us. If we want, we can practice with the backing of all that. If we open ourselves to it, the difficulty is that our sort of 21st century rational mind comes in and says, well, I'm not sure about that. And how does that work? And, I can't even see the Buddha on Zoom, let alone sort of tune into him without anything. See if you can, yes, acknowledge that voice, but put it to one side and go into your heart and just see what's there. Go into your heart and see if you can discover that link with all those other beings, with all those other practitioners, with all those other realized beings who were making great wishes for the welfare of the world, not just when they were around in the physical body, but forever. So yeah, who are we practicing with? And that can be a helpful question. That can tune you into more resources. Yeah? So we're not just going into this, little everyday me, trying to rescue all beings. Good luck with that. And then the other question that can be helpful is, who are we practicing for? Because yes, we can say, well, with the Bodhicitta practice, we're practicing for all beings. And that's true, and may it be so. And again, if we are all linked on that sort of heart level, then our practice could have a subtle effect, way beyond what we can imagine. But very often all living beings, can become a bit of a cliche. It sort of doesn't, can become a sort of empty generality. So it's also really helpful, in any practice or on any retreat, to think, well, who am I doing this for? There are days when I wouldn't get out of bed to meditate if it was just for me. But if I think, well, yes, I'm practicing for this person and this situation, then that gives me additional motivation. Vijaya Mana and I have spent quite a lot of time on retreat over the last 12 months. And quite a lot of that time, we've asked people to send us names of people to think of. So we thought about order members who've died and people that we know who are ill, but order members have sent us things about, my grandson has been very depressed and is suicidal. My granddaughter is this and that. And we've had a list, and we've just borne those people in mind, and we've dedicated practice to them. And over a 3-month retreat, the list could get quite long. I think we got up to about 70 people at one point. So I'd take sort of 15 people or 17 people a session and just bear them in mind. And not only does that motivate you, but it also takes it into a wider context. It opens your heart so that it becomes less about me. I'd really like us to have retreats where the teaching isn't really particularly for us at all. It's just like we come together as order members to practice for those people that we know who are in difficult situations. We practice for the order and for the world. I think that would be a fantastic thing to do. That would be a real Bodhicitta practice retreat. So yeah, those are two questions that it's worth considering. Yeah, who am I practicing with, which gives us plenty of resources, and who am I practicing for? And you might like this week, just at the beginning of the week, just to think of one or two people or situations and think, okay, for this week, whatever practice I do, I'm doing it for me and for the good of the world, but also I'm doing it for them in particular. It just makes it quite specific. Parami mentions it in her version of the practice when she goes on to talking about, considering the sufferings of the world. She says, oh, maybe there's somebody particularly you'd like to think of to get things started. And this afternoon, if you're in the breakout groups at 4 o'clock my time, you might want to just get to know the people in the group that your karma's brought you, or Zoom's karma has brought you, if it has karma. But yeah, if you want something to explore together, you could explore a bit, who am I practicing with? Who am I practicing for? And that just expands our vision. Yeah. So now we're practicing this big context. All these beings who are all been practicing the Bodhisattva path, all opening their hearts, to greater or smaller extents. We're practicing with all of those. Again, there might be one of those or a few of those who you particularly link to. Yeah. And who am I practicing for? Yeah. There's this suffering, there's that suffering, which actually does move me, which takes me out of my everyday preoccupations and stops me a little bit. And I think, oh yes, may that may that person's suffering be eased, may it be relieved, may it be helped. Yeah. Okay, any questions about that? No? Any in the chat? Nobody started? No? Okay. Good. So how long have we got left? 25 minutes. What should we do? I think what I'd like to do is, what would I like to do? Yes, what I'd like to do is I'd like us to sit, and to start with, I'd like us to just do a little bit of the dedication ceremony. We'll just do the bit about where we create a mandala with the circles of protection. I'd like us to do that together. And usually you do it in a place. Yeah, usually, you know, around this mandala, this sacred spot, and you think, well, I'm at Adhisthana, or I'm at this retreat center, I'm at Sudarshana Loka, or I'm at Tiratana Loka, wherever I am. Yeah. Actually, again, if we're thinking more in terms of being on a heart level and connected on a mental level, it's almost like we create a space on that level where we're all together. We create a mandala together. So let's create that mandala. We'll put some protection around it. And yeah, we could also maybe put some protection around, include in our mandala those people being ordained this afternoon, those 16 new Dharmacharinis who are coming up. Yes, so we're part of the resources for them. And from there, we'll just go into a very short guided meditation. And that will be it for this morning. And then groups, I'll do this one more time. Groups at 4 o'clock this afternoon sharp. Teaching starts at 4:30. This is my times, British, UK and Ireland time. And then this evening at 7:30 is the last session of the day, or whatever we call it, wherever you are. Okay, so let's again sit quietly, get ourselves comfortable. And this afternoon, we'll actually launch into looking at the practice and see where we get to. So letting ourselves just notice how things are. Now bringing awareness down to the ground. Giving our weight to the earth. And then letting the body open. Feeling or imagining space between the vertebrae of the spine. Lower half of the body solid and grounded. Upper body light. So now let's use our imagination. So on the mental level, we're going to create a place where we're all meeting on retreat. And it's up to you where it is. Could be a shrine room, your favorite shrine room of your favorite retreat center. Could be some place in Buddhist history. Could just be something that appears out of your own heart mind. Somewhere we're all gathered together. Mind might take a minute or two thinking, oh, it could be like this, it could be like that. That's okay. but then see if it will settle. And once we have a place, we can have a sense of all of us on the retreat, all seated together within that space. We can see friends and people we know. All of us from different parts of the world, all gathered in this heart space together. So here we all are in this mandala space. And now we're going to do what we might do if we gathered in a physical space. And we're going to produce the 3 circles of protection as we do in the dedication ceremony. So I'm going to read the verses that we use. And I'll leave a little space between each of the 3 descriptions, so we can just visualize the lotuses, the Vajra wall, and the ring of flames. You want to repeat the lines out loud, you can, but it's enough just to do it in your heart. Around this mandala, this sacred spot, may the lotus petals of purity open. around this mandala, this sacred spot. May the Vajra wall of determination extend. Around this mandala, this sacred spot. May the flames that transmute samsara into nirvana arise. So here we are together. Within this Bodhicitta mandala, protected by the three circles, practicing with one another, but also, as we're outside time, you can see who else we want to be practicing with. Could be the Buddha, could be our Yidam, could be any great bodhisattvas, could be any of that great chain of teachers and practitioners who've kept the flames of love and wisdom burning down through the centuries. They can all be at the heart of our mandala, supporting us. Let's just sit in this situation for the last few minutes of the session. When we're ready to bring the practice to an end, making sure that we're well grounded in the body again, taking our time to change levels, bringing as much of the feeling of that heart mandala as we can into our next activity. Okay, thank thank you very much for all that, and see you in a few hours' time.